Hello everyone, welcome to Presentation Experts. So today I am here with a new presentation topic. So before starting, please subscribe to our channel and like and share and also comment on the videos. So let's begin. So the topic of today's presentation is object-oriented concepts. So today we will see about its introduction and OOPS principles. So what is object? An object is an real-world entity such as pen, chair, table, computer, watch, or anything. A mobile phone, a charger, a battery, all these are objects. So object-oriented programming is a methodology to design a program using classes and objects. So by using classes and objects, we design an object-oriented program. So it simplifies software development and maintenance by providing some concepts. So the object-oriented is a programming paradigm based on the concepts of object, which may contain data in the form of fields, often known as attributes. The fields objects are known as attributes, and the code is known as methods. For example, a person is an object which has certain properties like height, weight, gender, age, color, etc. is an object, and it has a certain methods like move, talk, motion, etc. are known as methods. So the one of the first truly objected programming languages is Smalltalk. Smalltalk is considered the first truly object-oriented programming language, and the other popular languages are Java, Objective-C, PHP, Python, C++, Go, and many other. So here are all the listed OOPS principles, starting from object, class, inheritance, polymorphism, abstraction, and encapsulation. So first we will see abstraction. So abstraction is an essential element of object-oriented programming. It refers to providing only essential information to the outside world and hiding the background details. For example, a web server hides how to process data it receives. The end user just hits the endpoint and gets back the data. So what does a web server do? We don't know what functionality, what programming language is being written inside it. We only hit the button and we get all the data. So this is what a web server do. We can take another example of a real world example, like we have seen a laptop. In a laptop we get a fully completed manufactured laptop. We don't know what is inside the laptop, what type of processor is inside, which type of fan is inside the laptop, or anything else, what the USB driver is inside the laptop. So other thing we don't know. These features are hidden. This is what abstraction do. So an abstract class is one that cannot be instantiated. So we cannot create an object of abstract class. All other functionality of the class still exists, and its field, methods, and constructor are all exist in the same manner. Just we cannot create an instance of the abstract class. So everything is done as it is, but we only cannot instantiate the abstract class. So an abstract class cannot be declared with abstract class must be declared with an abstract keyword. So we use abstract keyword to create an abstract class. It can have abstract and non-abstract methods. So an abstract class can have abstract and non-abstract methods. So it cannot be instantiated, as I have told you earlier. So it can have constructor and static methods also. So it can have final methods, which will force the subclass not to change the body of the method. So we can use final keyword also with abstract class, and abstract class can have constructor and static methods also. So here's an example of creation of abstract class using abstract keyword, class A, the name of the class, and curly braces. Next, what abstract method? A method which is declared as abstract and does not have implementation is known as abstract method. So only we declare the abstract method, we do not define abstract methods. Abstract method would have no definition and its signature is followed by a semicolon, not curly braces. So example of abstract method is keyword, abstract keyword, then the return type, and name of the method. So we only declare the abstract method, we don't define it. Next we will see encapsulation. Encapsulation means wrapping up of data. So everyone, we have seen a capsule. So in a capsule we don't know what type of medicine is inside the capsule. Only we have seen the wrapped up capsule. So this is what the capsule do. This is what the encapsulation does. Encapsulation hide the data using a private keyword, and these private class are accessed using getters and setters in Java. So encapsulation is the technique of making the fields in a class private and providing access to the fields via public methods. So public methods are the getters and setters. If a public field is declared private, it cannot be accessed by anyone outside the world, outside the class, thereby hiding the fields within the class. So for this reason, encapsulation is also referred as data hiding. So encapsulation is also known as data hiding. Encapsulation can be described as a protective barrier that prevents the code and data being randomly accessed by other code defined outside the class. So by using encapsulation, we cannot randomly use the data. Access to the data and the code is tightly controlled by an interface. The main benefit of encapsulation is the ability to modify our implemented code without breaking the code of others who use our code. So with this feature, encapsulation gives maintainability, flexibility, and extensibility to our code. So the data would be hidden only by the public methods. We can access the data. The public methods are the access points to this class fields from the outside Java world. Normally, these methods are referred as getters and setters. Therefore, any class wants to access the variables should access them through getters and setters. The benefits of encapsulation are: the fields of a class can be made read-only and write-only. A class can have total control over what is stored in its fields. The user of a class do not know how the class stores its data. A class can change the data type of a field, and users of the class do not need to change any of their code. So these were the benefits of encapsulation. Now next is inheritance. So inheritance is inheriting the properties from base class to the child class. So inheritance can be defined as a process where one object acquires the properties of another. With the use of inheritance, the information is made manageable in hierarchical order. When we talk about inheritance, the most commonly used keyword would be extends and implements. So by using extend keywords, we inherit the properties of other classes. So these words would determine whether one object is a type of another object. By using these keywords, we can make one object acquire the properties of another object. Class can then be inherited by other, more specific classes, each adding those things that are unique to it. In the terminology of Java, the class that is inherited is called a superclass. The class that does the inheriting is called a subclass. So superclass is a parent class and a subclass is a child class. Therefore, a subclass is a specialized version of a superclass. It inherits all of the instance variables and methods defined by the superclass and adds its own unique elements. So all the features of superclass are inherited by subclass using extend keyword. So the types of inheritance, there are 4 types of inheritance. First we will see single inheritance, in which there will be only a single parent class and a subclass, in which a subclass inherits the features of parent class. So here the class A extends class B extends class A. So class B is inheriting the features of class A. So next is multi-level inheritance. So multi-level inheritance means there will be a level of inheriting classes. So here class B is inheriting the features of class A and class C is inheriting the features of class B. So there will be 2 parent classes and 2 subclasses in multi-level inheritance. So next we will see multiple inheritance. In multiple inheritance, features of multiple classes are inherited by base class. Like here we can see there are multiple parent classes like class C, class B. So the features of those parent classes are inherited by a subclass A. So A is inheriting the features of class C also and B also. So class A extends class B, C. So it's inheriting both the classes. Next we will see hierarchical inheritance. So in hierarchical inheritance, one class shares the property to different classes. So like here, parent class A features are shared to subclass B and parent class A features are shared to subclass C. So class B extends A and class C extends A. This is called hierarchical inheritance. Next we will see polymorphism. Polymorphism is the ability of an object to take on many forms. The most common use of polymorphism in OOPS occurs when a parent class reference is used to refer to a child class object. So polymorphism means one form, many things. One thing, many forms. So poly means one, or morphism means many. So one thing, many forms. The most common use of OOPS is that a parent class reference, the parent class reference is referred to a child class object. So for reference uses, polymorphism is used. So polymorphism is a concept by which we can perform a single action in different ways. Polymorphism is derived from 2 words, poly and morphs. The word poly means many and morphs means forms. So polymorphism means many forms. There are 2 types of polymorphism in Java: compile time polymorphism and runtime polymorphism. We can perform polymorphism in Java by method overloading and method overriding. So first we will see runtime polymorphism. So method overriding is a runtime polymorphism. In method overriding, derived class provides the specific implementation of the methods that is already provided by the base class or parent class. In method overriding, return type must be same or covariant. Return type may vary in the same direction as the derived class. So in runtime polymorphism, there would be a base class and a derived class. So base class will be a parent class. The method will be same, but the classes would be different. So runtime polymorphism means two classes with a different name, but the same methods, same method name is called runtime polymorphism. So as we can see within diagram, so here is a derived class and a method, same method but different classes, and the base class also has same method. So same method but different classes is known as runtime polymorphism. Next is compile time polymorphism. So method overloading is a compile time polymorphism. In this, there will be a single class but different number of arguments, same method name with a different number of arguments. So in method overloading, more than one method share the same method name with different signature in the class. In method overloading, return type can or cannot be same, but we must have to change the parameter. So in this, the parameter would be different, but the method name will be same. So as we can see with the diagram, there is a class which has same method name but different number of parameters in it, like x and y in next method, and x, y and z in third method. So the method name is same but the parameters are different. It's called method overloading. So that's all for today. Thank you for the presentation, and please like, share and subscribe to our channel, and do comment on videos, and press the bell icon for all new latest updates. Thank you and subscribe to our channel. Thank you very much.